Hey, everybody, welcome to our podcast. I'm Ariel.
And I'm AJ.
And
And
this
this
is
is
Actually
Actually Useful.
Useful. It's a podcast about resisting enshittification. AJ, what is that?
Well, I thought you'd never ask. Enshittification is the intentional degradation of internet platforms in pursuit of profit at all costs. The cycle goes like this. First, a platform is good to its users, often operating at a loss to get maximum user acquisition. Then, the platform is good to its business and advertising partners at the expense of its users. And then the platform reaches its final form by being bad to everyone in pursuit of pure
Everyone.
profit until it inevitably dies, taking with it the communities and content that it once fostered lovingly.
Yeah, dude, think about all the places on the internet that we once loved that are now dead because the
Rest
profit
in
greediness
peace.
got too big.
So, an example of this, a company like Uber, stage one, taxis are pretty much ever present. Anybody can just, hail a cab. And Uber's like, we're going to make this easy. You can now call a cab to your door. You now call it on demand. You're still in the restaurant. So they flood the marketplace. It's really cheap. Ubers are like $5. Everyone's like, oh, need to get on this thing. So they start using it, and they have a competitor that comes out. And then, little by little, it's like, wait a second, my Uber is like 10 minutes away, or in these other places, it's taking so long. And now all of a sudden, we're at a place where if you look down at your Uber app, and if you're in LA, it's like $50 or $60 or $70 to go across town.
Yeah, dude. Last Memorial Day, I took an Uber from LAX to my apartment, which is like a 12-minute drive on a holiday, and it cost me $130. I was like, and of course at LAX, you have to like take a bus in order to even get to the
Lax
Uber.
it.
So it's
Yeah.
just like, what is this? So yeah, so enshittification was coined by Cory Doctorow like recently in like the end of 2022. We are huge fans of Cory Doctorow, as I think anybody in this space is. Daddy Doctorow. But yeah, so we have a lot of questions about enshittification that we would love to explore, and it feels like the only good way to do that and talk to some of the people that we want to talk to is to open up a platform and see that maybe other people have those questions as well. So first, we'll just introduce ourselves and let everybody know who we are. So AJ, what's your background?
So I started my background in product management. Gosh, honestly, I would say I started my background in product when I was working in the film industry because I got an internship at Amazon, Amazon Studios. So I was, making decisions about the type of music that should go into the film and TV and different content that Amazon was making. But all of a sudden, I felt like, okay, are we making art? Are we making content? And are we driving Prime subscriptions? What are we doing? And so that really like sparked a lot of this curiosity that, led me as I was in college and figuring out what I was going to do with my life. It like really kicked off this journey of exploring the intersection between technology and users and design and media and culture. After that, I was kind of deciding what I was going to do with my life. And the options in front of me was go work at the biggest of all big evils, Google, as a legal analyst. Go do a reality show in Norway called Alt for Norge.
Wow.
Or like truly drop off the face. I'm part Norwegian. So it was like, if you're at all Norwegian, you get to kind of go and find your ancestors there. It's like an amazing race. And
Oh,
the
that's
winner would win
cool.
like 50K or something, which at the time I was like, oh, I'll be set. 50K,
Yeah.
like I'll find my husband, I'll settle down in Norway. But I was gonna have to miss graduation, and my parents were like, la la la, and I kind of honestly smart. So instead, I did this thing called Venture for America, which was founded by Andrew Yang, the UBI
Yeah.
guy. And his big vision, his big dream before doing that was, how are we going to fix what's happening in the country? Oh, what we're going to do is all the brain drain. So the smart kids from Ivy Leagues or little Ivies or whatever that are going into consulting or finance or tech, let's send them to these cities that everyone's forgotten about. These like Midwestern cities that are in the Industrial Revolution, and let's train them and like let's bring thought leaders together, and that we're gonna make 1 million jobs. We got together in Detroit for a summer, and at the end, there's sort of this matching process where you decide where you're gonna land, like who you're gonna match with. And believe it or not, I matched with a trucking technology logistics startup that was based in Pittsburgh. So long story short, I worked there. I basically accelerated the fourth industrial revolution. I built IoT devices, which are tracking devices in trucks. And for truck drivers, I did ride-alongs all over the country, into Canada, into Mexico. And I would like learned how our supply chain worked through the lens of technology and through the lens of let's automate stuff. It's a federal regulation that they have to have a device in every single truck tracking every hour that the driver, every minute, every second that the driver works, when he sleeps, when he takes a break, what his lunch break can be. And before, it was still a federal regulation, but it was on paper. So you could fudge it. You could be like, oh, I pulled over at this time. And you're basically right. With a technology device, with everything automated, your truck might just stop in the middle of the highway. So that was fascinating. Like, it's so many intersections between the future of work, the future of humanity, tech companies, mega trends, the supply chain. And yeah, then I kind of zoomed back into the whole music film world through my current music tech job. I've now, really seen first and foremost the effects of enshittification through at all these different periods and seen this full life cycle of like, this is amazing, life-changing, helping technology to, all right, this is now literally the big devil. So
yeah, I think it's so interesting how much it's like it spreads across every internet industry. I mean, people are using enshittification to talk about just like any of the effects of late stage capitalism. It does, in Cory Doctorow's original definition, refer to like internet platforms, but we really are seeing it everywhere. And I also had the same experience of like feeling like I had this awe of like working in a really cool industry and being able to solve really interesting problems, and now not feeling like that at all. So yeah, for me, it was like I've been a product leader for over a decade for startups, mostly marketplaces, who, spoiler, turns out are like some of the worst offenders of enshittification because they have the tools to really be able to like hold two sides of a market hostage to one another. I would describe myself as a reformed enshittifier. My like specialty in product leadership is growth cycling, essentially. So like there's this idea of like a hook cycle, which is sort of the like addictive loop that you get people in that gets them to the dopamine hit and keeps them coming back to your application every single day. So that's me. I made a whole career out of like getting really good at identifying all those variables and triggering people to come back and back again. And we use the word trigger because like that's what it is. It's like you have this, first it's sort of an external trigger, like an email or a push notification, and then you have developed a habit, and a person has an internal trigger, like they're bored or they're lonely or whatever, and then they fill it with the app that I'm working on.
and do you bait them, and then do you switch them, or do you bait and bait?
Well, the idea, I mean, in theory, you can bait and bait of like, right, some products I've worked for, it's like, oh, you're bored, so you want to like scroll this thing that like you might have a good relationship with. So like I haven't worked for any companies. I've worked for startups. So it's like nobody's committing horrible sins, but they're also like, they become shit eventually, right? So it's like at some point I feel like I'm baiting and switching them by, not offering them what they actually wanted. Personalization is like a big evil in a lot of the like types of marketplaces I work for, because you come there to look for the things that you've explicitly told the app you're interested in, and we instead give you what our sponsors would like you to be interested in, which is not the same thing. But yeah, a big like aha moment for me was I read the late great anarchist anthropologist David Graeber's book called Bullshit Jobs. Huge fan of David Graeber.
Huge fan.
Love,
Wait, we haven't even talked about him yet.
know. I love David Graeber.
Oh
So
my gosh.
in Bullshit Jobs, he defines that as employment that is like so pernicious, unnecessary, or pointless that the employees don't understand why they're even doing it. But as part of the condition for the job, you have to act like what you're doing is important, and you have to like put up this cosplay at work that like what you're doing actually has value. And I don't know that I felt like my job as a PM in the company was bullshit, but I felt like the work that I was doing was pointless at like a social level. And David Graeber uses this phrase spiritual violence, which I really latched on to and really started to inform a lot of the ways that I felt about my work, because it is spiritually violent to make your employees create morally reprehensible shit, which I don't really think that I did, but it's also spiritually violent to make people create things that they're just not proud of, that like don't really do anything good. Like, it's spiritually violent that I'm only doing jobs that are like not the potential of what I actually want to do. And here's what's really crazy too, and the part that like really fucks with your head, and is honestly just like an industry level gaslight, is that there's this huge disconnect between what we're told to act like and honestly like what we're graded for at a performance review level as product leaders. We're told that we're the mini CEO of the product, that we're advocates for the users, that we're like big problem solvers. And all of those things are theoretically true in the concept of like what a product manager should be doing and what a product manager is capable of doing. But the output that we're expected to deliver is a completely separate thing. The output we're expected to deliver is almost universally the most revenue for the least effort every single time. It's not about the users. And like, I would go to meetings, like we would have meetings where I like present to the whole company what features I'm going to be working on for the next quarter. And like, I'm leading a team of like 40 people to be building. And if I had 5 slides, 4.5 of the slides would be about how great this feature is for the users. And only like the last half of the last slide would be like, and by the way, it's also going to make us like this many millions of dollars. And it's going to be this good for our bottom line. And everyone in the room, me, my manager, everybody listening to the conversation knew that like we didn't have the conversation for the user. We didn't start the idea for the user. We started it by being like, how can we make the most money for the least amount of effort?
Let's work backwards and
then
find
I was like,
the user pain point.
Exactly. Like, how can I turn it back into like, okay, well, let me just backtrack into the user. We just ignore anything that like actually would be bad for the user. So I got really into Cory Doctorow. And he talks about 4 major constraints against enshittification, which are competition, regulation, labor power, and self-help, which is like being able to modify proprietary shit with homemade or third-party solutions. So like he talks about like, this would be like unlocking an iPhone would be an example, or like HP wants you to only use HP printer cartridges. So like if you could theoretically make your own third-party cartridge, you used to be able to do that. But basically all 4 of those factors are like very much in the toilet right now, and they're not going to get better because that's not the type of president that we have in office right now. That's not where our government is going, and probably also not like the very most important thing that we're working on at the moment. And so it felt like in a world where we have like we have like more power going to these giant monopolies that are just surveilling our whole life and controlling everything we're doing. We have like less regulation that's actually benefiting users and more IP laws that turn corporations into people with people rights. We have like absolutely no labor power. Like, that's a big change from when we talked about like at one point in time, we felt like as tech workers that we had some like, I don't know, cachet. We had like a little bit of interest of like, this is cool. Like, that's not really a thing anymore. And yeah, there's just so many things working against us that it's like, what is an individual even supposed to do? Like, if you could leave your job because you disagree with what you're working on, whether it's morally reprehensible or just not very useful, it's not like there's a directory of like companies that make thoughtful products with user-friendly policies. And like, if I wanted to found my own company, you don't even as a founder have like a tremendous amount of agency. And so like, that's what brought us together and brought this podcast into where it is.
That's such an amazing summary. Just a quick, of the types of bullshit jobs, flunkies, goons, duct tapers, box tickers, taskmasters. I know personally, I've been one of those at like every stage of my career. Even like, working at a restaurant in high school or as a lifeguard, but like, where do you feel like you've been mostly sitting in those categories of bullshit jobs?
Well, that's the thing that's interesting is that I feel like I really examined it. And like, one of the things David Graeber says is that he would never argue with somebody who doesn't think their job is bullshit. So like, if you think your job is important, then by definition, you don't have a bullshit job, right? It's not about that. It's about like, if you're feeling an emptiness inside, then maybe there's a reason for that. I feel like my job in terms of like our output as a company and my role in an organization was actually quite important and not bullshit. It's that I also felt like a thing as I was reading this book, I felt like the work that I'm actually doing, like the output we're all making as a company, is really
society.
not important. It's just pointless. It doesn't do anything. People aren't even having a good time. And that was when I felt like, especially being on platforms where it's like I've been on both sides. I've been on platforms where it had a user base that loved the product and then started to turn against the product because it got enshittified. And I've also been in a situation where I built a product up from the beginning and I've been part of that like really exciting early stage where you're like, we're going to get as many users as possible. And I've been in the conversations where it starts to slip and it starts to be like, well, now that we have these users, how can we exploit them for our partners? And eventually that's going to go downhill. And so I've just felt like the companies themselves are doing stuff not because there isn't an opportunity to make useful work, but because we're not choosing to take it because it's not the most immediately profitable path to take. And so it's a really weird position to
Yeah.
be in.
Does your company specifically reference enshittification? Like, has there been any town halls or has it come up in product meetings?
No, and what's interesting too is like one of the products that I worked on is a forum product. So like our users are very active at like speaking directly to the people who make the product. And I don't think even any of them reference enshittification. Like it is such a new term as well. But there's definitely calling out enshittification if not naming it directly. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
users are like, hey, you're only doing things we don't want you to do, and you're only doing it either because you're dumb and you don't care, or because you just like blindly would like to satisfy your partners and
Yeah.
shareholders over your users.
Right now, we're having this trade off of how proactive are we with our communication around the fact that we know that enshittification is a thing and that this is what happens versus like reactive, getting comments in Instagram messages or DMs or things, which we see the validity, but then we also see the back end of it. And we see these other big trends that it can be difficult to know how, from the perspective of the company, how much to kind of call a spade or call this out when that will ultimately hurt your bottom line, even if you're trying to be an ethical company, which, I do believe that the organizations that I'm part of, it's comprised of great people who are trying to do their best.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way too, where it's like I don't think there's any one person at the companies I've worked for that is like the chief enshittifier. Like it's like it just kind of fell into that way, you know?
Yeah. An interesting thing I didn't reference in the background, but kind of just as a hobby, a side project, I took this course at Stanford called Ethics, Tech, and Society for practitioners. And it was basically comprised of a lot of folks who work at big tech companies, also in the government. I was sort of the representative from startups and then kind of from artists as well. And like every person in there is taking this course because they care, and they
Yeah.
want to do something different. And they just don't know how. You could be the head of policy at Google and you're like, help, like I'm getting directives from the CEO who's also getting directives from their investors, who's getting directives from XYZ. And so it's hard to pin down exactly who is, Dr. Evil
Yeah.
sometimes. And, even when we have pain points and we're talking to the customer service people, we're like, customer service sucks. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, if customer service has a little bug in their ear, that's like, you have to make your quota. You have to talk to these are the policies. Then they have to be the bad cop. They got to be the bad
Yeah.
guys. They don't
Absolutely. I
suck.
mean,
It's their
they're wage
bosses.
workers. Yeah. Like we
Yeah.
can't be mad at them.
It's
Yeah.
not their fault. And
Absolutely.
they like this morning, I had a funny scenario of being locked out from losing my phone and my Waymo for 4 days.
Yeah. Full
Anyway,
enshittification story.
full enshittification. It took me fully 4 days. Many friends. It literally took a village to get my iPhone back. So shout out to the village. We love you. But I'm sitting there crying outside of the Waymo warehouse, and these lovely, lovely security guards, so kind, Upton, shout out. They're like, man, like, we're human. We see it. They're walking by, but they're still like, well, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I know you have your passport. I know you have your identification. I know you can literally draw a picture of what your phone looks like and name every sticker on it and everything. And it's like, we still need the IR number, the LF dash 4157, the lost and found code, the screenshots of your trip, the person who called it, his phone number, like all these different things. And they're like, ma'am, we are so sorry that we've kept you here for 2 hours and you borrowed your friend's car and he's late for work. Like, And so anyway,
Well,
it's
you have
not
to wonder with that, like, who's like, what's the benefit? Like, who's benefiting from that, right? Where it's like, if you're in a situation where obviously there's not a security issue. You have all of your identification. You know that
yeah.
it's your phone. There are people who work for Waymo who are like, we know that this is your
We
phone.
know so many people. There was
we
like
believe
15
you.
people. They're like, we
So, like,
believe you.
what is it? Is it an intentional act to make it really hard to get your item back because it's costly for Waymo to try to return lost and found items? Or is it just no one did like a use case for it and was like, how frustrating would it actually be if it's somebody lost their phone?
They didn't consider those the contingencies. And I, as a joke, but I kind of said this to Josh before we hopped on. I was like, if the so they're scanning the facial ID recognition, like everything is tight security and you have to have the right barcode to scan in. I think it's RFID or barcode or one of those, or maybe it's LiDAR or whatever. But I'm like, the cameras should have a built-in, if they see a human outside crying, they should just say, security override. We're going to send a human out who can just help you out and just have a human for right now until the robot, I guess, is good enough that they're like superior to the human pains and intelligence.
This is the thing that I've noticed too, where it's like, I'm really interested in the like evolution. So like basically internal chat bots, even before they were actual bots, even when they were just like deterministic logic trees and they weren't AI, or like things saying that they were AI that aren't AI, like they've always been bad. Like there's never been a little corner, hey, I'm from Delta Airlines, can I help you? Like, unless it's a real person, it's never been helpful, right? But I'm so interested in how like it's evolved to be even worse with AI because people don't know how to use it. So like it used to be that if you call CVS and like you talk to their automated whatever, you talk to Delta and you talk to their automated phone answering, you used to be able to like give any number of verbal cues to signal, I have a complex problem and I need a human to answer.
And they're like, hey, we'll get it.
Yeah, they'd be like, okay, we're connecting you to a live agent, right? Where it's like, obviously there are things you can do from these simple logic trees and there are things that you cannot. For some reason, like adding a carry-on pet to your flight is not a thing that any automated system has figured out, even though it's just same like 5 questions every time. But I can't now. I've
surfboard. The surfboard would always get me. I'm like trying to bring it's oversized baggage.
Yes, oversized baggage. I don't understand. Like now, if I try to tell the phone line at CVS, the phone line at Delta Airlines, whatever, to be like, connect me to a live agent, usually because I've already gone through this prompt multiple times, they like cannot understand live agent. So there's not even like, there aren't even overrides to be able to like, this is a no exit. This is another Cory Doctorow term. It's like, there's no exit. There's no ability to exit the loop. There's no ability to exit the platform. Like, it's just so frustrating. And it's getting worse.
That's a Cory Doctorow. That's the name of this record that I've been trying to make.
Well, I mean, it's also 2
years. I mean, it's Jean-Paul Sartre. That's what I wrote it. Yeah, I was like, that's what I named it after, like a pretentious person that I am.
And Cory Doctorow, it means like you should be able to leave a platform with the content that you put onto it. So like you should be able to like tell Instagram, I'd like to leave Instagram and I'd like to have all my Instagram content like easily packaged,
quick exit,
ideally interoperable,
an abort
so that
button,
I can upload it to something else. Exactly. But you can't do that. And that's intentional because people like me want to enshittify it to keep you in the platform forever. And that's why I'm a changed woman now.
I think it's both to your earlier point of whether or not it was, lack of considering the use case versus the bottom line and the profits it's costing them time. I'm curious, and I'll research this, like what is their metric? What are they measuring? And I'm sure it's like, as somebody who's forgetful and has lost this item, that's going to take more manpower to do that. But I was curious, so I chatted to the guy who was at the first place, where I could see that in Inglewood, where I could see that my dot appeared on the map. And I was like, does this happen often? Like, what's the deal? And he's like, I've been working here for 8 months. And I was like, it's happened to a few people. And I'm like, dozens? It's like,
Ooh.
20, 40, 70, 80. It's like, yeah, something like that. So at some point now they should, if they're smart, they should do like a quarterly review or a 6-month review, right? And say, okay, for those 80 people, but depending on their riders, their ridership, that could be 1%, that could be 10%, probably more like 0.01%, in terms of what their goals are. So that's still going to be in the minority. And the complexity of my case, that they would say, oh, I just assume, oh, I assume that person's probably going to have a phone or another device.
Which is crazy because like a phone has got to be the most left behind item in a rideshare.
Right.
Like it just has to be.
I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, I take responsibility. I'm a forgetful person, but it was late at night. I was tired and I'd set it on the seat and it blended in. It blended in with the seat. As humans, we make mistakes. We get tired, especially if you're working full-time jobs, especially if you don't have the luxury of being like, oh, I'm just going to go buy a new iPhone or buy 4 more iPhone devices. And guess what? Every single thing that I tried to do this weekend, I needed a mobile phone with a mobile app. I couldn't leave the parking garage.
It's a real thing.
Sorry.
I do a lot of activities without my phone, just as sort of a meditative thing. And like, there's a lot of things. So, like, I love to go to the zoo, the LA Zoo, without my phone, and they don't have a paper map. They don't make paper maps anymore for the zoo, which makes sense. They're like, it's just trash. People leave it all over the grounds. Like they're not, but they don't even have like in the back of an office somewhere, an old paper map. So every time I go to the zoo, you're forgetful. I'm easily lost. I get lost everywhere I go. And like, I constantly have no idea where I'm going, which kind of makes it a little bit more meditative, but it is crazy. I have to like go to the library to print out my ticket because they only have tickets and like, the ticket is a QR code. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
Funny.
Just
There's
navigating the world without your phone.
The two sides of the coin. And a lot of my friends assume that because I'm forgetful, I also don't have a good sense of navigation and get lost. And I'm like, those are actually different things.
Not forgetful at all, and I have a terrible sense of navigation.
So let's go back to our agenda here. Will you tell us why we are doing this podcast?
Yeah, well, so basically, enshittification, as we know, is being talked a lot about, by a lot more people more often. Its Google trendiness is really going up. People are really Googling enshittification. But most of the content that's coming out is being made by journalists and policy advocates. And it's like amazing, incredible, thoughtful work. We're also going to launch a like companion Substack. We will link to a bunch of these people's amazing work because obviously we are reaping the benefits of giants. We're standing in their shadows. But what I have noticed is that like all these things and frustrations that you and I have just talked about as being individual workers and all the people in your Stanford cohort who are like in this situation where they're being told by their boss's boss's boss that they have to do this thing that feels spiritually violent to do. It feels stupid and pernicious and useless. And humans, there's all this research that humans just want to do useful things. So if individuals cannot stop enshittification because it's really about these macro factors that are super high level and take place at a society and require very large portions of people to be coordinated. What can we do as a community, as individuals who want to be able to have more agency, as people who are interested in doing more ethical work, in not enshittifying, people like us who like are PMs that want to have a good relationship with our users and actually be advocates for the people who use our products? What can we do about that? And that's what we want to focus on in this podcast.
So we're going to talk to companies that are doing radical things to improve this shitty product ecosystem, like centering users over profit, choosing degrowth, competing with mega incumbents, staying a nonprofit. Any companies that are choosing usefulness over hype and profit, we're going to highlight here.
Yeah, and we're also going to unpack factors that enable and encourage enshittification so that we can understand who is benefiting from those factors, who is in control of them, and if there is a way for individuals and small communities to be able to push back or at least avoid those factors. And so those are unpacking things like how venture capital and private equity funding relates to enshittification, how IP laws treat corporations with more rights than humans get treated with, the like radical erosion of user privacy over the last 15 years, UX dark patterns that have been normalized. We're probably going to do a whole episode on accept cookies, the
dark arts of the dark patterns.
Just can't deal with it. And so our hope is to be able to support techie individuals who just want like less shit in their work and in their life as a person who uses tech.
Like, how can you just as a person exist, use some cool products, and kind of find the harmony, knowing that, hey, it's here, man. These apps are out here, and there's gonna be people using them. So,
and it's not gonna get better.
It's not gonna get better. Well, I think I'm a radical optimist. I'm like, utopia or oblivion. We just have to believe in the utopia, and we have to do it. we have to believe. I know that it's like, it's good to be, to hold the pessimism and to fight with the demons, but
Well, here's what I do think. I do think of the internet. I think it's helpful to think of the internet as like a landscape. Like it has similar properties to actual real estate, to physical landscapes. And I do think, and I want this podcast to contribute to at least creating a corner of the internet that is more useful and is kinder to its users and has thoughtful decision making in terms of its product patterns. And I think we can absolutely find, if not everything get fixed, then at least find a better corner of the internet that we can belong to. So it's unfortunately really easy to think of examples where tech platforms have been shitified in horrible, horrible ways. Facebook truly is enabling a genocide in Myanmar by not investing in moderation. Literally, it was like they couldn't be bothered to do it. Sarah Wynne Williams' new book, Careless People, outlines all of the sins that Facebook has committed. I highly recommend you read it. It's amazing. They tried to get into China, which they're still not in, by basically trading. They were like, oh, we'll surveil all of China's citizens for the Chinese Communist Party. We'll do that in order to get the Chinese government to let Facebook in there. They've contributed to misinformation campaigns during Trump's first presidency. Google has another example. This is another example from Cory Doctorow's book, The Internet Con. He talks about this example of a dad of a young toddler who had a penis infection, and the doctor of the pediatrician was like, cool, send me a photo of it on the like HIPAA approved, electronic medical record. And the dad took a photo of it, sent it to the doctor, whatever, but like is a Google user, has all Google products, and was set to auto upload the photo. So the photo gets uploaded to Google Photos. Google then flags it as child pornography, which it is not. And then in process of trying to deal with this like false claim of child pornography, the guy gets locked out of all of his products, still does not have access to his Google Photos. The police, when they finally had to reach the guy to be like, you didn't commit a crime, it's fine, these products suck, they had to reach him via snail mail because like all of his products were Google products, which is like a really extreme version of what you've been dealing with for the last couple of days of just like you couldn't get into anything because of two-factor authentication. So it's like inshitification is risky because these products hold you hostage, they hold you captive, and they're connected into every aspect of your life.
Yeah, like the example of DoorDash ads and Uber committing algorithmic wage theft. And even like as a consumer, if you're just turning on the TV, I think you'll hear a lot of times being like, now we have more commercials than we had back in the
literally, and it's more expensive.
Commercial break. It's more expensive.
The total cost of all the streaming services is more expensive than cable. It's crazy.
I need the Netflix and the Hulu and the this and the that and now, yeah. And honestly, old commercials were kind of slapped. They got cool
They're
graphics.
definitely better.
They had jingles. They had cool music.
Dude, Hulu radicalized me because my parents, they don't pay for the ad-free version of anything. And Hulu truly gives no fucks about its ad users. They really don't. And they're like, literally my dad and I were watching this like Stories of the Whales or whatever, this like amazing National Geographic whale documentary. It's like so poignant. We're on a scene where it's about how like they have mourning rituals and it's like they're carrying a like dead baby whale calf, and Hulu just cuts right in the middle to a terribly jarring ad and then cuts the ad off in the middle of the 2.5 minute break. I never even got to find out what the product was.
It grabbed your attention. It grabbed it.
For? I don't
and now you're
understand.
researching and now we're talking about it. So they did a brilliant job. So Ariel, how are we going to fix this?
Well, have you seen the Lyft CEO's recent memo on inshitification?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Falcon Mode. That's the answer. We're all going to go Falcon Mode.
Falcon
and that's
Mode.
how we're going to solve it. So basically, the CEO of Lyft sends out a memo to all of his shareholders. It's public. You can Google it. And he talks about inshitification. He like credits Cory Doctorow. I don't think it's like, again, this goes back to what you were saying about at your company of like, there's a certain respectability of like being a CEO of a large company and being like, hey, I'm aware of inshitification. So he sends it out to shareholders basically to say, Lyft is aware of inshitification and we're not going to fall victim to it. But the way that he describes described the solution for Lyft is that he was like, I'm going to go Falcon mode. Lyft is going Falcon
Zooming
mode.
out over everyone. I can see everything. Eternal surveillance of the spotless mind.
His description is that a falcon, being a bird of prey, is like a falcon can fly up really high and see everything from like a really high level, but also can really quickly dive deep into things. So like going Falcon mode is a situation where you're aware of things at a high level, and also you can go into like a deeper level of things. And I'm reading this and I'm like, I think that's called thinking. Like, I think
it's called like zoom in, zoom out,
thinking.
Big
like,
picture.
I don't think you have to call it Falcon mode. And I hate this like tech bro culture where like every single thing has
not
to be
the birds, bro. Leave us the birds.
Yeah, leave the birds for the neurodivergent, please.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I mean, I saw a bumper sticker on a car that was like, find a non-human teacher. And immediately my brain was like, oh no, why robot? And then I was like, oh wait, they probably mean
they mean an animal.
They mean an animal, or they mean
animal.
like mushrooms. But it's interesting. Like the animal kingdom is so diverse, right? So if you think about one bird, falcon, it's like, yeah, there's a lot to learn from a falcon. There's also a lot to learn from geese and from butterflies and migration and different ways that you can go about things, not always being like a bird of prey. So cool that you picked that one.
It's such an aggressive, exactly, such an aggressive animal to be using as a CEO. And what's funny too is
they're
like
cool. Like sometimes I'm going falcon mode. I'm going
falcons are bad,
bro.
But like literally
beautiful.
His solution when he was like, I'm going to go Falcon mode. And what that looks like for me is I opened up the Lyft driver app and I drove one person. And also the story, like the solutions he ended up coming up with were fine. They were like feature adjustments based on this woman's story. But it was so tone deaf because the woman like uses Lyft to commute in the Bay Area. And it's like, if the car is $20, she can afford to go to work. And if the car is $40 because of price surging, she can't afford to go to work. And I was like, this is a really tone deaf thing for you to put into this shareholder.
How do you know what she can afford?
Well, they talked. They had a whole conversation because he's like, I'm the CEO and I don't know what he did.
Yeah, but that's why I'm like, she'll probably disclose some things, but like, I don't know, I know this when I'm doing user interviews, right? It takes a long time to build trust and to build, and so
absolutely.
Whatever the user tells you right off the bat, you can't take that for it.
I just think it's so CEO too to be like CEO meets one disgruntled user and changes the whole product roadmap.
I'm talking to our users. I'm a man of the people. I'm amongst it.
I'm sorry, Lyft CEO. It's not about you, but you know.
Yeah, it's not about you.
But anyway,
shout out for trying. At least shout out for referencing it. And it's cool. And we're gonna get it in the discourse, and we're gonna break it down.
Well, we're getting it into the discourse right now because we are gonna end every actually useful episode with this fun listener segment, and we were gonna call it free product ideas because that is what it is. We want to be able to like just come up with a better system for like something fun, bring back fun to being a tech worker and to being a person who solves problems. So we want y'all to send us your silly little product ideas or your good product ideas, and we'll break them down and try to figure out like who would use it, how would you monetize it, who might buy it. But in honor of this absolutely ridiculous memo that we just cannot stop talking about, we are now going to call this segment Going Falcon Mode because we are going to be thinking, and that's apparently what that means. So we want to hear from you all. You can reach out to us at heyactuallyuseful@gmail.com. Send us your product ideas and we can bat it around. We're also on Instagram at actuallyusefulpod, and we're on Blue Sky at actuallyuseful. And can't wait to talk to you guys again.
Can't wait. Thanks so much. This was such a fun chat, Ariel. And shout out to Josh, our amazing producer.
Yes, this was produced by Josh.
Woo, 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 woo.
Actually Useful is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's co-hosted by Ariel Butters and AJ Weaver. It's executive produced and edited by Josh Stratton Carlson. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to our Substack or YouTube at Actually Useful Pod, or give us a follow on most social media platforms.